I'm Gab. He's Jules. We back, baby.
Yes.
Blue skies over West London. 4 weeks off.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about our holiday. So let's get straight into it because there's a lot to get you caught up on. There's a lot of Gianni Infantino FIFA stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that in a bit. Rodri, how about that? Stolen from under Real Madrid's noses? Possibly. Mohamed Salah has a new home. Vinicius, his new home is his old home.
Yeah.
Lots going on, but let's start with the Community Shield because Arsenal and Manchester City. Arsenal, obviously the defending champions. City new manager Enzo Maresca. Some people like myself thought, all right, given that it feels like everybody in the Premier League has changed their managers in the last 8 months, City might be the best of the bunch to challenge Arsenal. And they get absolutely destroyed 3-0. And I know it's preseason friendly, blah, blah, blah. But this is ugly.
Yeah. I think when you consider goal after 24 seconds like they did, it obviously changes a lot of things in your game plan, in the way you would approach the game and the way you play, and also the way the other team plays. And for Arsenal to score so early then made it much easier in the way they could defend and let the ball to City, which they did, because I think City had close to 60% of the ball in this game. But Arsenal used it much better. They defended really well. There was never really a way for City to break them down. And even when they had a couple of decent chances, like the one for Haaland, the shot from Foden, the one from Cherki, it was just well saved by Raya and not well executed from a City point of view. I still think that there's much more to come from Maresca and City. I don't think anybody should be worried about that performance, but it's a 3-0 defeat and it's not a great start for him for sure.
Well, let's get into that because, obviously the window's open and obviously we all have to put in our predictions, who's going to win the title and whatever. And I'm like, this is kind of silly because especially with some teams, they're so far behind where they're going to be, both in terms of preparation, but in terms of personnel. Let's get into, I think for Arsenal, I think that should be briefer. They've been linked with another defender. There's talk of Konsa. There's talk of Kwanzaa. Other than that, I don't know. And obviously there will be outgoings, I assume. Jesus or Martinelli, maybe. We can talk about that in a bit. But we don't expect anybody coming in who's going to crack the starting lineup, do we?
Well, maybe on that left-hand side, I think the idea was to go and get another left winger, especially if Martinelli leaves. I think Solis was a good replacement for Trossard, but I think they were also looking, like we saw with the Vinicius links, for a player certainly more established, let's say, than a player as young as Solis, who did really well in the game against City. But I think they're looking for somewhere there on the left-hand side. And a centre-back who can also play right-back. They like Ezri Konsa a lot. They like Jules Koundé. They like Jared Kwanzaa. But it would also depend on what Ben White does, to be
fair. I think we're talking about finishing touches, alternatives as well. I'm a Madueke guy. I've kind of become one. I thought Solis, 2 assists yesterday?
Yeah.
With City, it's a different story. They've been linked all summer long with Enzo Fernandez. He has a good relationship with Maresca. This seems to me, for me, the main basis of the link. I look at this midfield, and Tijani Reinders is gone now. Yeah. And I say, they could definitely use another body. And obviously, Rodri. Boadi's the guy they've been linked with. If they get Rodri money in, I'm assuming they can get Boadi, right?
Yeah. He's only 18 years old. So
people forget this. Yeah. And I really want to emphasize this because I know we have the whole if you're good enough, you're young enough, and blah, 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 or young enough, good enough, whatever. And Lamine Yamal's done it at a very young age. But it is a big ask, especially if you're in midfield. And we saw it in the World Cup too, where you did really well and then kind of fizzled against
completely.
France.
Yeah, fizzled after that opening, 45 minutes or an hour against Brazil. After that, it was more difficult because he's an incredible talent, but still very young. And I think that he could just come in and replace Rodri and have those kind of input, I think is putting a lot of pressure on him. And I don't think he's ready. I just don't think he's ready for that. So you can sign Boadi and he might be ready in a year or two. You can go and sign somebody in between Boadi and Rodri, who nobody's as good as Rodri anyway. But I don't know, let's say a Stiller, if you like that kind of player from Stuttgart, somebody like that who has already more experience than Boadi, who can do a really good job in a team like City, in a Maresca team. Because what we saw yesterday in that game against Arsenal, we can talk about Elliot Anderson a bit later because I'm not sure I really understand the use of him or why not using him more or better. But there was, Kovacic coming. There was this back three: Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz, and Kusanov kind of building. Then you had Kovacic, and then you had the three of O'Reilly, Foden, and Anderson. So there's something interesting he's building, but you need the right players to fit in that.
And we'll see if Enzo fits into it, because I don't.
he would,
Chelsea
certainly.
put this deadline of Friday at 5, but deadline schmedlines. We know that's
it's
not.
BS,
There's
we
only
know
one deadline that matters, and that is the transfer window. We're going to break this down further on the Gab and Juls podcast. All right, Jules, let's just try to order kind of what we said. Maybe we'll go by departments. We'll come back. Let's start with the midfield. Since you brought up the midfield, you brought up Elliot Anderson's role. I'm a huge Anderson guy. I would imagine he can maybe. We talk if Boadi's not ready. I mean, you talked about someone like Angelo Stiller, who's one of those guys who like scouts and numbers geeks love. Julien Nagelsmann perhaps likes him a little bit less, and other people seem to rate him a little less. I don't know that City are in a position to go and blow a lot of money here on him if they also want to get Enzo and Boadi this window. What are the reasons? And I know you would lose a little bit. I'm wondering if Elliot Anderson can't grow into that role, especially if it is more of a midfield 3 rather than the 2 and the 4.
Yeah, no, I think he can. I think maybe the
rather than seeing him the way we saw him today, where it felt like it was Kovacic who was more central and Elliot Anderson seemed to be floating around.
Yeah, in the 3-1-3, and then obviously the 3 forwards. It was definitely Kovacic more in front, but I think Anderson would play there if Enzo signed, for example.
Right.
I think having O'Reilly, Foden, and Enzo as your 3 makes a lot of sense. Where you want to have them, then I think Elliot Anderson can play just in front of the 3 who will start the build-up phase. And if you sign Boadi, then that gives you more option. The midfield was always going to be the part of the squad where they need the most rebuilding, or there will be the most changes, because Bernardo Silva left, because Rodri is about to leave, because Nico Gonzalez is not really good enough, certainly for starting position. So you end up spending 116 million on Elliot Anderson. You will spend another 100 million on Boadi, and you will spend another 120 million on Enzo. I really think Boadi and Enzo will end up at City this summer. And just in that midfield 3, you would have spent 300 and, almost 50 million, which is a lot of money. But they're 3 incredible players that, if you use them well, I think can take you to the next level. There's no doubt, because the rest is in place.
But maybe not straight away with Boadi. It's essentially what we're saying.
But you need another body anyway. So if you have Anderson and Enzo already,
with Foden, you're saying that can.
Yeah, and even Nico Gonzalez as a backup and Kovacic, that's great. You had Boadi, you have a pretty special midfield. All those 5 for kind of 3 positions. If you
what you don't have in that setup is Ryan Cherki starting.
It's Foden or Cherki anyway, but it was the case last season.
Yeah, and it was better with Cherki than Foden. I'm saying this is a big year for Foden. Obviously, he said the whole summer. I'm not going to judge him on the Community Shield, but I think it's pretty evident that the club have gambled on him in terms of extending his contract.
Yeah,
they're showing a lot of belief. He didn't necessarily. I don't even know if Enzo worked with him before when he was in the youth team, because Foden was already training with the seniors at a very young age.
Yeah, no, he didn't have him, but he had him as an assistant.
He would have had him as an assistant. There's a relationship there. I don't see Foden and Cherki necessarily as alternatives to each other, and I kind of feel that if the believing in Foden means Cherki's not getting minutes on the pitch, that is going to have to be a big call that he has to make. And the other big call is Foden or Cherki on the side of a 3, even with the one behind, what we were describing with a 3-1-3, or 3-1-3.
Yeah, 3-1-3 setup.
Yeah. I don't know that's Cherki. I don't know that Cherki has necessarily found his best position yet. You're still talking about a young player.
Yeah.
But man, the temptation to just saying like 2 wingers, Holland in front, put Cherki further forward, give him freedom, and have 2 guys covering him behind who can pass. It seems like such a straightforward thing. And I know Maresca likes to do more sophisticated things, but maybe I love Shirky too much. I don't.
No, no,
I,
no. I really think it's a matchup between Foden and Cherki for that kind of central role, really, behind the two wingers and Haaland. The wingers are very important for Maresca, and
which is my next point.
yeah,
As we
there's
move
not
into
many
the front three.
permutation there, as we saw yesterday. And if Semenyo and Doku are not in a great day, like they were not in that Community Shield, Arsenal defended really well, were very often 2v1. So it was hard for Doku and Semenyo to really do something special. You can put Foden at wide or even Cherki at wide, but you lose a lot of what obviously made them special. We talked about that a lot last season already. So it's one or the other. You need almost both because you need options and rotations and things like that. But personally, I'm a Cherki guy and not a Foden guy, but that's just me.
Do you need another center forward too? If Marmoush, because Marmoush has been linked, people have been trying to move him all summer.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be a Maresca type, let's say. I'm sure he's a wonderful person. And you may need to move him just to get some money back if you are going to spend all that money if Enzo and Buari arrive. But then you have a problem then, because then you say, well, Semenyo is the alternative to Holland.
Yeah, I mean, Mubara did really well, I thought, in pre-season, but he's still quite a young striker. Marmoush did okay in pre-season too. But if he goes, then I think, you look at a replacement for him. Unless you bring another young player from the reserve team up to the first team, like Divine has done. It's possible. I think Marmoush will stay. I think they need somebody like his profile. And I know if he wants to play more, he will have to leave. But
he can also get time on the wing too. Like if we are going to be short with wingers, right? If you think that, Doku and Semenyo, if you need a backup there, I know Savinho obviously played with a move as well.
Yeah.
There's no reason Marmoush can't play as a wide player, right?
Yeah.
He's going to do it differently.
Yeah,
he's going to have different characteristics. But the other thing with City, for me, I was very skeptical at the back about carrying this many central defenders as they do. So this many really top notch, because Guardiola is a top notch central defender. He's obviously put his chips in the Ruben Diaz basket by making him captain.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he can't be benched occasionally, but fundamentally, you've got Marquet and you've got Guardiola, right? I know you need 4 central defenders, but the question is always resource allocation, right? If you play Kusanov on the right or Guardiola on the left, you can do your 3+1, and then you have Nunez on one side, or maybe Ait-Nouri, who, if not, I would assume was probably going to go if they find a taker. And obviously you've got Nico on the left. Is that how it's going to shake out? Of those 4 A-list center backs, will 3 kind of always play?
Yeah,
and
I
one
think
might be
so.
on the right and one on the left.
Yeah, I mean that's what we saw in pre-season. That's what we saw in the Community Shield. I don't see why he would change. Certainly in possession, our possession is a bit different. Would you trust O'Reilly at left back or more Gvardiol at left back? I think there's a lot you can do with Gvardiol if you want to start with Kusanov, Diaz, and Gehi, and then have O'Reilly on the bench and Gvardiol as your kind of left back. But you can also go in midfield and do a bit what Calafiori did in that game on Sunday in the Community Shield for Arsenal. I think there's a lot you can do. I think O'Reilly is probably the best for that if that's what you want. But I think Gvardiol can give you something else too. I think they have, and I can see what they're looking for a right back in case for some games they need a more traditional back 4, for example, and they might build up differently because they will be super dominant. But I think they've got. I'm ready to give him a pass. I thought people were really quick to judge Maresca on the game yesterday.
You can't judge somebody that
and criticize him and everything. I think you could see the structure, you could see the permutation. I think there's a lot of interesting things that he's going to do, and these squads, compared to now, as you rightly said, Gabby, earlier, would be very, very good and very different. Certainly much, much stronger in 2 weeks' time when the season properly starts in the start of September after the end of the transfer window. And I think then he will have so many different options in the same position, have different profiles. He will be able to do a lot of things. Then the pressure will be high because he will have to deliver. But for now, it was unfortunate that they conceded so early. I think there was still some interesting things they did tactically, but he needs a full squad ready to go for September.
I will say this from a recruitment perspective. and there's obviously recruitment is difficult, and there's always a lot of stuff that we don't know. It's not a good situation to be in, to be left with 2 weeks to
It's
go,
pretty late. That's true. Yeah.
and to have to sign
Yeah, sure.
200 million
Yeah,
potential players
absolutely. I agree with
to
you.
have a complete squad. And we know
Yeah.
there's reasons why: Rodri, the World Cup, Real
Yeah.
Madrid, Barcelona, whatever. But that's not that's definitely suboptimal. Looking at Arsenal, on the other hand, the Vinicius story. How real was it in your view? Because from my view, with the greatest respect to Arsenal, I would assume staying at Real Madrid would have always been his preference. I don't know all the things that we've criticized Vini for at Real Madrid in terms of his work off the ball and tracking back and whatever. It never seemed to me that Arteta was going to be like, oh, look, now you're at this club where we work. Everybody works. Look, even Bukayo Saka's working, so you have to work too. I didn't think, why would Arteta want that kind of headache?
Yeah.
Do you think it was kind of like, well, if there's the right opportunity, sure, but we're not going to make this a centerpiece?
No. They really believe that it could happen. They worked on it quite hard to be ready in case he didn't extend at Real Madrid. That was always the case. But as long as he didn't extend, they had a shot. And they were really keen, Arteta included. I think he would have been a game changer. I think it was always a bit of not a long shot, but I think they also knew that staying at Real Madrid was the number one
Right.
option. And if that didn't happen, and it could have well not happened, then he would have come to Arsenal. The fact that in the end, I think Real Madrid also could not afford to let him go. And then they made the extra effort, they paid the extra money to keep him at the club. For Arsenal, what's interesting now is you missed out on Rodgers because you didn't want to match the offer, well, I think, way over the valuation of the player that Chelsea did. Fair enough. Then you tried for Vinny, and you tried for Vinny believing that there was a possibility, and I think there really was a possibility, but it didn't happen. And so what do you do next? Because Rodgers would have come, and I think Tolisso would have come. Vinny would have come, and Tolisso was already there.
So you're a player down, is what you're saying. If Martinelli goes.
If Martinelli goes, then what is the next possibility? Do you go for Barcola now and kind of almost break the bank because he would be expensive? Do you look at another option of maybe a younger player? Mika Götze was a possibility before he went to PSG. Do you go like that? Or you say to Martinelli, listen, we're going to keep you at least until January, and you have that left-hand side with Martinelli and Tolisso, who work really hard, who are really good players.
And Madueke too. Like it's not like Madueke goes away. Presumably, hopefully Saka will play a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Eze can play on the left side. So you're probably covered.
For me, it's very simple. For me, I say, look, until Daumann's ready, because Daumann's the horizon, right? It's very simple. You go to Martinelli, like you've been on the market for 6 months. Nobody's matching our valuation. Obviously, somebody comes and says, hey, I'll give you 60 million for Martinelli, fine, right? But I would say, like, are you up for a 1-year extension? And it's going to be like last season. In other words, Solis is Trossard.
Yeah.
But he's a younger Trossard who's new to the club, so presumably won't get the trust that Arteta had in Trossard. So there will be opportunities for you. We need your different profile from Solis. You're fast, you're direct in a way that Solis isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to compete on that left-hand side with Solis and Madueke like you did last season, and we won the title and we reached the Champions League thing.
Yeah.
And even at the risk of him leaving on a free, it's really not the end. I don't think it's the end of the world if that happens.
No.
I would try to give him a 1-year extension and maybe a little bit more money. That, for me, makes a lot more sense than going and blowing another 60, 80 million. Arsenal have spent so much money, and the reality is, and this takes us to the other argument, those Miles Lewis Skelly stories and that were those words, pure profit, right? We know it's kind of almost like ugly words to use when we're talking about human beings.
Yeah.
But because, when somebody's been at the club a long time, like if they were to sell Saliba, he would basically be pure profit because he's been there long enough that he's, his residual amortization is very low.
Yeah.
I don't know how that even came up. Or how seriously to treat the Lewis Skelly thing. Certainly with him starting, there are a lot of bodies for that midfield. Hopefully it means Rice plays a little bit less because, and you can preserve the best version of Rice. But they're going to have to. I mean, we can rule it out, right?
Yeah. I was told there was
Okay.
nothing in it at all. I don't know where it came from.
So then there's a Nwaneri issue potentially.
Yeah. But that was always
which
always
we
the case.
know.
He wants to play. Yeah. And
I think
he needs more minutes.
Nwaneri, you don't sell Nwaneri. You loan him.
No.
You
Yeah,
loan
he's got a
him. You have
long-term
to
contract.
do
isn't it?
that. And then Gabriel Jesus, who's linked with Napoli.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any money back. You shouldn't get any money back.
No.
For him, you wish him well, and that's it. The additional defenders all based. It's all Ben White contingent. Do we think?
No, it's the Saliba injury because obviously we're not sure exactly. Well, it's a long-term one, and it might be back in December. It might be back in January. We don't know. And Timber is also injured. So right now, if something happens,
Timber's much closer, no?
Well, yeah, but still not ready yet, not training with the team or anything like that. So if something happens to White or Mosquera, then suddenly you're looking at it in a very different way. So that's why I think they're looking at that position especially. And I think that's probably a position where there's something interesting to do, even for Konsa or Koundé or people like that.
This is where I go back to my favorite thing, which we're going to talk about later, which is veteran player on loan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liverpool, for finally doing that. We'll get to that with Ronald Araujo later. I think that's a great deal for Barcelona. But hey, you got a body.
Yeah.
I might have chosen a different live body, but you got a body. But in terms of starting 11, what we saw from the Arsenal, for me, I saw Odegaard back. When I was critical of Arteta last season, it's because I was like, Odegaard and Saka are your best attacking players. And Kai Havertz. And when I look at this and I see that Saka's on the bench, you're coming in, he's not fully fit, Odegaard is ghosting through games, even when he's playing. Gyökeres is starting instead of Havertz. I'm thinking, I want to see technical Arsenal. I want to see Arsenal outplay opponents rather than outset piece them. And, and we know you can do that, but because you need to have that other dimension when you have so much talent. If we get this Odegaard all season long, Arsenal are really going places.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the momentum of the World Cup was always going to be positive for him. And I think he's ready to go. I would have liked him to have a bit more rest even, because he feels like he had a bit of holiday but came back pretty quickly and pretty strongly. So he might have a dip in form in November, December, which I think for a lot of the players who went far in the World Cup is to be expected, whoever you are and wherever you play. But the form that he showed yesterday, and again, we've said it many, many times, but he's so important, not just for Arsenal with the ball, but also obviously in the press and the counter press without the ball. So they need him at his best. I don't know what that means for Eze, for example, and other in that position. There will be a lot of games to play for everybody.
We didn't mention Eze as an alternative on the wing.
No, I said on the left. Yeah, I said Eze can play there. But he's better as a 10.
So you have Eze, Madueke, Solis.
Madueke is the replacement to Saka on the right. I think he rarely plays on the left.
But if Saka, we're hoping Saka's playing, right? Saka's fit. Saka's Arsenal's best player. Saka plays, right?
Yeah.
Well, we will have to think in
absolutely,
terms. And then, but then you have Madueke, then part of that rotation.
But not high in that picking order, I think.
Maybe not high, but you're still an option there.
Sure.
And then if you also keep Martinelli, and you have Dalman. I mean,
Dalman is after Madueke on the right.
But he can play on the left too.
Yeah, but not really.
You don't think so, Dalman, with his physicality?
I think there's an interesting point to be made of should they make Dalman play on the left, like build him to play there. Right now, he's not ready to play there. He's got all his life he's played on the right hand side. He's still a young player that even is learning to play on the right hand side as a left-footed winger. So to move him to the left now would be, I think, very difficult. But you could do some work with him so that he can get there at some point. But right now, he's not.
I've had people tell me his future is probably not as a winger, and he probably has a skill. 3, 4, 5 years down the line to actually play as a 10, which I don't know if that position exists very much in football anymore, but
I agree,
So basically, well done, Arsenal. There's not much argument here. They are the favorites right now to win the Premier League.